All right, that now brings us to our flyweight main event of the evening, where we got former champion Brandon Moreno coming in at minus 225, going up against Lonnie Kavanagh, who comes in at plus 190. Now, we saw Moreno back in December, where he ended up getting TKO'd by Tatsuro Taira in the second round of their matchup. That was a tough fight for Moreno, who did start off pretty well, landed some good shots, but it was very hard for him to get away from the grappling of Taira in round two. I counted about 20 unanswered shots that Taira was able to land on the back of Moreno, especially with that back position. And I believe the referee gave Moreno many opportunities to try to work out of that position, but he was eating too many big and clean shots that the referee was forced to step in and stop it. Moreno had his two-fight winning streak snapped that night. But again, it's not a bad loss, especially when you consider that Taira is now scheduled to fight for the title in April against Joshua Van. But Moreno showed in the Usyk fights and the Albazi fights that he's still a very high-level fighter, even at 32 years old. He's still in his prime. When he's at his best, he utilizes his boxing combinations very slick. He also has a good enough grappling game to lean on that if he needs to. And we know his cardio is super high level considering how many 5-round fights we've seen him in. Also, even at altitude, he's been performing well, even when he's been fighting in Mexico City. That loss that he suffered to Brandon Royval was a very un-Moreno-like performance. We saw him be very predictable. Royval was able to land a better variety of shots. It was a close fight. Royval still deserved to win it, but I thought we saw Moreno go back to the well too much that night against Royval. Then he went back to the drawing board before the Albazi fight and showcased a much better performance, and he was able to touch up Albazi to win that fight pretty clearly over the course of 25 minutes. Now he's going up against Lonnie Kavanagh here, who suffered his first loss in 10 fights at the hands of Charles Johnson, and he got finished that night as well in the second round, and that fight was back in August. Now, that fight took place in Shanghai, which is, I believe, where his parents are from or where he was born. So he represents China, in some of his fights, but he does train out of the UK. He trains at a Great Britain top team headed by former UFC bantamweight Brad Pickett, who's done a great job in terms of creating a great gym there and great atmosphere. And Kavanagh was one of his prized possessions, right? Outside of Nathaniel Wood, Lonnie Kavanagh was the guy that Brad Pickett was beating the drum on a lot. And he showcased why through his Contender Series performance, where he knocked out Antoine Ho in the first round in his big win over Jose Ochoa. And then he showcased his diversity in the Felipe Dos Santos fight, where he outstruck him in the first round and then got to his grappling in the second and third rounds to grind that fight out. He was unable to do that against Charles Johnson, though. He was up in the first round, outstriking Johnson, landing the better shots. Then he started getting to his grappling in the second round, but Johnson showcased great grappling defense, continuously working back to his feet, and then applying that pressure on Kavanagh. And about 2 minutes into that second round, you can see Kavanagh starting to suck wind, starting to slow down, and Johnson sensed it, put his foot on the gas, and eventually got Kavanagh out of there near the ending of the second round. And that's going to be Kavanagh's kind of issue and something that he needs to work on moving forward. He wants to try to stay safe. He wants to find ways that even if his opponent is pressuring him, if he can't lean on his grappling, at least try to stay safe enough in the striking realm where he feels a little bit more comfortable and where he won't gas himself out as quickly, just as we saw in the Charles Johnson fight. He's very well-rounded. He's very skilled. He has some good knockout power as well. But for his career, I think this is a horrible decision for him to fight a guy like Moreno on short notice coming off of your first loss. Now I get it. It's kind of a win-win situation, right? You fight Moreno, you beat him, you launch yourself into title contention immediately. You lose, you took the fight on short notice, you fought a former champion, you stepped out of your level and tried to test yourself. I think he would have been better suited to just hold on to his fight that he had originally scheduled, which was 2 weeks after this fight, where he was supposed to take on Bruno Silva. But he wants to challenge himself. All props to the kid. Unfortunately for him, I think he's really up against it here against Moreno. Moreno has great durability, as we obviously know. Moreno has insane cardio, as we obviously know. Kavanagh could make this competitive in the first round or two, but I think once we start getting into deeper water, the altitude is going to start biting Kavanagh in the ass, and I think that's where the experience of Moreno really starts to come through, and we see him start to put the pressure on Kavanagh and eventually lead to a round 4 or round 5 finish for the former champion. So I'm kind of surprised the line is moving against Moreno. When I originally studied this early last week, he was roughly around that minus 270 line. Now he's down to minus 225. I think this is a phenomenal line to take advantage of, and I think this is more so of a vet lesson type of scenario for Brandon Moreno. He's going to, be competitive early with Kavanagh, but as we start to get into deeper water, look for Moreno to really start pulling away and teaching a lesson to the youngster. So give me Brandon Moreno around 4 or 5 TKO, maybe even submission. I think he gets it done inside the distance in those main event rounds. So give me Moreno inside the distance.